from the Grand Jury Award for Best Short Film, Carter.
Yeah.
And this is producer-director Xander Copp.
Nice to meet you.
Nice to
Thank
meet
you
you.
so much.
Pleased to see you. Okay, all right, same question for you. Where did this begin?
Yeah, so it's an adaptation of an H.P. Lovecraft short story. So it started with that short story.
Okay.
And yeah, my DP found it. A bunch of Lovecraft's work had just become public domain.
Oh,
And
great.
he sent it to me, and I was like, this is great. Passed it on to a couple friends of mine who are writers, and like, do you guys want to take a crack at this as an adaptation? And, you know, did a few rounds of edits and submitted it to funding. And kind of like found the personal angle once we kind of got the ball rolling on it. And then once we had funding, it was just like, okay, how do we make this happen?
And what was it about this specific short from H.P. Lovecraft that stood out to you, or was this something that the writers had chosen?
I mean, it was the short itself, like my DP, I think initially was like, this is just going to be a really cinematic
I see, okay.
like concept, and I saw it right out of the gate in that respect. I think it took a little bit to kind of find the personal angle and to kind of yeah, for a creative like jumping off point for me was grief.
Okay.
And that wasn't necessarily foregrounded in the short story. We kind of had to tease that out through the writing of it, and in our adaptation, our interpretation of why these characters were in a cemetery and why they're like digging up this crypt. So that was kind of like finding it. But right from the get-go, I think we just saw like this opportunity to like build a cemetery and like these kind of two different areas, and having this communication with through the like coiled wire receiver, just to be like something that was going to be really fun to kind of just as a creative project of like building tension with one character off camera, going into the depth, and how are we going to build these two sets and put them together. Like right from the get-go, I was like, this will be a fun sandbox to play in, and then finding like the personal entry point with grief of like two characters who are desperately searching and lost and like obsessed with grief, and like with Warren kind of going into the crypt kind of being like a metaphor for sinking into like the pit of grief. For me and the actors, I think was really helpful to kind of take it one step deeper than what on the surface, and for I think a lot of viewers is just like a fun horror thriller.
Right,
Yeah.
right. No, you have to have something like that behind to inspire the passion.
Sure.
You mentioned you built these sets. Can you explain what that process is like for maybe some of the filmmakers here who haven't had the privilege to do that?
It's tough. It requires a lot of prep, a lot of favors, and yeah, I mean, just like the methodology was just like, okay, let's build the tombstones first, and well, that's not. We had to find the location, which our like DP, his childhood home had a like very large front yard, and we just kind of like right out of the gate we're like, okay, can we shoot in a way to deny the house? And that was really helpful, just because like having a house close to the set when you're doing night shoots is really nice for actors and the crew to just have a warm-up space, and that's like tricky with like if you were to do a practical cemetery. But then yeah, it was like a few weeks of prep of like building these tombstones on a budget with like a really dedicated art team, and like finding people to like do favors and to work within like a small budget was really helpful. But yeah, we called in all the favors. You know, I was doing some of the woodworking and building myself, you know, getting right in there with the art team. But yeah, it's like find the right people, find the people, like our production designer did a great job. She'd like built tombstones before, so she kind of knew the starting point there, and then it was just kind of like placing the tombstones to camera during the day, getting ready for the night shoot to like kind of fill out the vision. But you know, so much of it is you have to stay on your toes through the whole thing.
Yeah,
for sure.
And did you look to any other adaptations of H.P. Lovecraft for any kind of inspiration?
There's like a few out there, and I know that there's a couple in Guillermo del Toro's
Right.
anthology series
Okay.
that were really great. So that's helpful, and kind of establishing tone and like the whole cosmic horror genre is like all like Lovecraft. So just to establish the look and the feel of something otherworldly, but not necessarily like alien, just kind of like the unknown.
Right.
And like that was definitely something that I wanted to, like, a theme of the unknown and the unknown of death and the afterlife, kind of all trying to encapsulate that visually as kind of an idea, was definitely something I pulled from his work and from other adaptations.
Interesting. And I noticed in the credits there was a Canadian board. I mean, here in the are you a Canadian?
Yeah.
Okay,
yeah.
we're so unfamiliar with that because we don't have something like that. But can you tell us what that grant process is and what it's like?
Yeah, so we applied to 3 grants and got 2 of them, and there's like kind of like the federal one, which is Canada Council for the Arts, and then a provincial one, Ontario Arts Council. And you can, usually you need like a short to begin with as like your portfolio piece.
Okay.
To be like, I've done something before,
Uh-huh.
but once you've done one, you can submit, and like there's people who have continued to make art pieces through their entire careers, like, and just continue to do short form filmmaking and continue to be funded by these art councils. It's really great. I guess the tricky thing is kind of like the more like commercially viable your film is, the harder it is to get the grant. So there's like some verbal gymnastics that you have to play with your grant application. Because like for me, you know, I do consider film an art form, but I also, you know, I like stuff that will resonate with like a mainstream audience.
Of course.
And so it's kind of tough to kind of toe that line when you're trying to sell your film for funding for like and sell it as you know, an artistic endeavor. So that's the one thing I will say that's tricky about it. But yeah, I mean it's so great to have those programs, especially early in your career, to be out, because like this one I knew was going to be a bit of a build, and like without that starting, like I put my own money into it, but without the starting point, I don't know how we would have done it, to be honest.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, we're all very jealous. And last question from me. You know, cosmic horror, in order to sell that genre, it really relies a lot on not just your score, but also your sound design. Can you tell me what it was like working with your composer and your sound designers?
Really great experience with both of them. I'd worked with my sound designer before on my first short, so I knew that he was gonna, you know, knock it out of the park in terms of cleaning up the mix and just like having a really solid just working relationship with him from the past. And then our composer really was like, it took a while to like find her, just because it was like a recommendation from a recommendation kind of thing, but like once I started listening to her demos, I was like, oh man, she's great, she's perfect for this project. She does like ethereal vocals, and she's like a horror composer, and so like a lot of the weird sounds that you hear are just like her recording into a mic using kind of like muffled, I don't know exactly how she does it, but like that was her vocals within the mix, and so
EQ'd heavily, of course.
yeah, totally. But yeah, I thought it added such an interesting kind of supernatural, eerie element to the film. And so once we got her score laid in, just kind of like cleaning it up with the sound designer and like one in-person session with him to like get the kind of balance right when she's within the crypt and we're hearing it through the telephone, because we needed to like not quite sound like her, and we needed like layers to that, and just getting that balance right was really important for me with the tension building and stuff. But no, working with both of them was great, and I think they both like really contributed to the like just the experience of watching it, I think, is so both the sound design and the score are so integral to that experience.
Yeah, well, they really help sell it. They really,
For
really
sure.
help sell it.
And I do have to give a shout out to the editor as well, because
Okay, they lay down the bones first.
for sure, and like a lot of like he sourced a lot of the sound effects that
Mhm.
ended up in the final mix.
Right.
Like we were like, maybe like yeah, I was like, go nuts, find whatever you can, and so many of those temp elements like landed in the final mix, and
Yeah.
like so much of the score was built from a temp score that he found. So it was like having that as a starting point was also really awesome.
Very strong.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll open it up over here to see if there's anybody with any questions. Yeah, please.
Can you talk a little bit about how the transition from short story to screenplay? Like, did you feel like you had to make any sacrifices? How did you adapt it?
Yeah, so we did, like right out of the gate, I think, I just made the decision, like the first draft of the script came through, and if you're familiar with the short story, it's kind of like an unreliable narrator type of story where Carter is in like a hospital being interviewed by the police because his like mentor has disappeared. And so we just like, right, the first draft of the script, there was a scene in the hospital, and just for practical reasons, I was like, I just don't think that we can like do this. Like, like we're already biting off so much with the cemetery. Like, let's find the angle just telling the story here. And so like, there's a lot of interesting stuff that we like sacrifice for like, because of that, because it's like, it is a mystery of like, you know, did something else nefarious happen in the cemetery, and like this is all being told, like the original short story is the statement of Randolph Carter. So we had to come at it from a different angle, and just kind of returning back to what I said earlier, like it was like the theme of grief that I think allowed us to kind of, was our creative like North Star of like, that's what will make this unique and distinct. And I think like the second or third draft, we're like, let's make Warren a woman. This is like, this story will be more interesting and feel more modern with her being a woman versus a man. So that's another change that we made. That I actually don't think we sacrificed anything with that. I think right from like the get-go, it like we read it through and it was like we didn't even change the name, and it just like it became more interesting immediately for all of us.
Any other questions? Question here?
You talked about sound design and score as a way of setting tone. I feel like also with sort of like mystical historical fiction, props are really key to like the story you're telling. Could you just talk about like what it was like with the telephone thing, some of the lanterns, like those hero props, and like making
sourcing those maybe. And
Yeah, I mean the prop rental house scene in Toronto is great. So just being able to like walk through the hoarder's paradise of like those prop houses is really cool. And so finding the lanterns was super easy. The telephone wired receiver was really tough because that's like just a custom prop. And fortunately because we came to set and it just like wasn't quite right. That was like the most important prop, but it's still just like shooting weekend arrives and it's still just not quite right. And I was like, okay, we have like the wire, but these receivers they're not quite gonna cut it as like close-up hero props. So fortunately, where we shot was in near a small town. It was an even smaller town, but it's near a small town called Barrie. And Barrie just happens to be like the antique capital of Canada for some reason. So we like sourced one from Kijiji and then luckily found the exact matching one at like an antique shop in Barrie. So that was just like really lucky. And then we just kind of like spray painted them gold, aged them a little bit, and they worked out great. Because yeah, I knew that like that prop specifically was just so key, just in terms of the look, but also just like the like theme, and something that I just think is just really unique about this short of like communicating to the underworld using like technology, and even like it being a period piece, like technology still kind of being this weird thing it's testing like, you know, the limits of what we even should as humans kind of be exploring, and are we messing with something that is like should remain kind of unknown.
Great. Well, round of applause, please. Okay, and for our final short here, winner of the Best in the Fest Award, When the Clock Stopped, from writer, producer, director, Brett Willis.